Hey everybody, it's Marc with MainWP, and today I have Brian Rotsztein from Uniseo. And Brian is an SEO expert, so guess what we're going to talk about today? SEO. I'm going to let Brian introduce himself, tell us a little bit about who he is, what he's been doing, and how long he's been doing it. Thank you very much, Brian, for being here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I actually started building websites in 1993, but I started with SEO in 97. Now, if you think about that, that's like before Google, which launched in 98.
Wow.
And back then, it was so simple. Doing SEO was so simple. You put a few meta tags in, a few keywords, and you were all set. And then obviously it got more and more complicated over the years. So I run Uniseo mostly as a solopreneur. Basically, we build websites, we have maintenance plans, we do SEO audits. We focus on WordPress for the most part. We do work on other projects, but WordPress is kind of our main area of expertise. And yeah, we've been doing it for 25 years. And
Wow.
yeah.
I've been in tech for practically my whole life, but I can't imagine like focused on any one thing for 25 years. I had an internet service provider, and I'm trying to think back then, did we even talk about search engine optimization, or did we just assume that, like you said, meta tags in there and everything just got organically picked up by Yahoo and Alta Vista and Ask Jeeves and all that back in the day?
Really, search engine optimization was definitely not a term back then. Like in 1997, it was like you would have these keyword generators. You put a few keywords in, and it would take the keywords and turn it into like a keyword meta tag, and then you would copy paste that and put that into the code of your website. Like it really resonated with me. One thing with me in particular, like some people try SEO and there's an art to it and there's a science to it. And I got both sides right away. I
Mhm.
had the right touch, and that's one of the reasons I've been so successful with SEO. It's like I just understood what the genius engineers, like computer engineers at Google, were trying to do, and what all the search engines were trying to do. Like it resonated with me. Like I was like, okay, I get it. I see what they're trying to do. Okay, how can I reverse engineer this? What can I do to a website that would make it attractive to search engines and to rank it highly? Now, back then, there weren't that many websites to begin with. And I guess it's comical, but back then, a lot of times I had to convince people of the importance of search engines. Like I remember in the early 2000s when I was trying to get one of my first clients, like web design and SEO, when I finally discovered the term SEO, and I was like, oh, that's what I do. I do SEO.
Mm,
Okay.
mm.
And so I tried to explain to people, like, okay, well, I'm not just going to build you a website. I'm going to build you one that's going to rank like in Google. And they're like, okay, yeah, so okay, ranking Google's who cares? What does that mean? Like people didn't know, they
Yeah,
weren't
yeah.
search engines weren't a go-to like they are today.
Mm.
And it was a very different world back then.
I imagine back then it certainly was a lot more of educating on the importance of it. These days, when you talk to a client, it seems like they already know that they need to get their websites to show up on Google automatically. They just don't know how to do it. And whereas back then, it was just assumed that it would.
No, back then it was more of like no one even cared. It was like the idea was like, okay, you'll have a website and you'll put it at the bottom of your email. Oh, by the way, like we now have a website. Like come
Mm,
visit us, visit
yeah.
often. It's going to be updated, with the little
Hmm.
under construction sign and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of my biggest pet peeves back then was like, come back often to check back often to see if our, website's been updated. Like, yeah, you're not that important. I'm sorry. Like, why would I come back often to your website? Just build the damn thing, and then I'll get some value out of it.
That's some candor right there. You're not that important. I'm sure they loved hearing that.
Well, I remember I was started volunteering. So I was trying to build my portfolio, and I started volunteering like for my friend's band. So I built them like a small website and very, very simple. And I was trying to explain to them like now you're optimized. So if you go to Google, like there's a good chance, or even Yahoo, it was more Yahoo back then. If you go to Yahoo, there's a good chance you're going to be picked up. And they were kind of like, okay, well, so but like, what does that give us? I'm like, people will get like that's exposure for your band. What do you mean? Like,
Mm.
and so I live in Montreal, Canada, but back then I lived in Boston, and I was like, look, if you want to get gigs around Boston, maybe people will find you if they're typing in Boston band or something like that. And it
Mm.
was things were so early.
Yeah.
And I was ahead of the game, trying to convince people of the importance of it.
Well, and it must have been like an easier journey for you, I imagine, since you've been doing it for so long, where you started at the beginning of the evolution. So like the algorithms weren't as complicated and such a moving target. They may have been a moving target, but they were probably easier to figure out back then, I imagine, or less
Yeah.
complex.
Yes, absolutely. I've been a trainer, so I've been in academia. I was actually in graduate school for psychology for the
Can I
longest time.
interrupt? Can I
Yeah.
interrupt here just really quick? And the only reason I'm doing this is Brian and I had a conversation at WordCamp US, and it cracked me up because he says, "Yeah, I have two degrees. One is in psychology and one is in whatever." And he goes, "Oh, wait, I have a third degree." And I'm like, "You're the first person I've ever met that's forgotten about a degree that he had." So, anyway, just an aside there. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No, that's
you
okay.
brought that up, and I'm like, who forgets they have a degree?
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I forget my whole academic career from like the, full accreditation schools like Boston College, McGill University. Like I forgot about all that. Like I was doing a PhD in psychology at McGill. I left, and then I went to Boston College. I was doing another PhD, and then I left that program. And so I did 4 out of 5 years of my second PhD, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'm done here. I'm just gonna go do SEO. So that was really, I don't know. I'm just one of those people who's adaptable. I was like, I find something I'm interested in, and I'm like, okay, I can run with it. I was actually teaching my own courses at Boston College and McGill. Well, McGill, I was a teaching assistant, but at Boston College, had my own courses. So what happened was when I made the transfer into the business world, I was like, oh, you know what? I really enjoy teaching and I love sharing knowledge. Like my whole life, my whole background has been academia and sharing knowledge. Like, it's like, what do you do as an academic? Like, if you're a professor, the one thing you have to be passionate about is sharing your knowledge, doing your research and sharing it with everybody. And you do it for free. So first there was a learning curve on that. I had to buy a book and figure out how to like charge for giving away knowledge, for passing on knowledge. That's a whole nother podcast story. I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to teach people how to do SEO. And it's interesting because back then a lot of people would say like, oh my God, you're crazy for giving away that information. It's like this hidden secret and whatever. And yeah, because you couldn't just go to YouTube and watch a tutorial. You couldn't just go to Reddit and see what people are doing. Like it was really complicated. Like you had to do a lot of trial and error. There were a few places where some SEOs would gather on some message boards, and then you kind of share notes, and figure out like how you can reverse engineer what Google's doing and all that. And so I would do a lot of testing and figure things out. Eventually, I put it all together. I said, you know what? I'm going to start teaching a course in SEO. And I was actually one of the first people in the world to actually offer a course in SEO. Now, in the beginning, it was nothing. It was like half an hour. It was like nothing to it. After a couple of years, it became 3 hours. And my 3 hour course became like the standard for several years. And eventually, Google got more and more complex. The internet got more and more complex. And I was like, okay, well, now I need like a full day course. So then I was giving workshops. And so I gave full day workshops, and people were coming from all over the place, like to Montreal. I had people from out of town coming to the workshops. And we would only do like a few people at a time. So it was very kind of limited. In house, like my company was offering about 20 different workshops. Some of them were just in name only. Like we put it out there, and if somebody would ask, maybe we'd create a workshop for them, kind of MVPing it, like the minimum viable product from the like
Mhm.
lean startup thinking. Definitely like the kind of intro to SEO and intermediate SEO, those were extremely popular. Also like, intro to social media. Look, we taught social media in a way that nobody on the planet taught. We're very, very proud of that. It wasn't about, showing people what buttons to click. It was explaining to them why they need to find those buttons to click to begin with. So it's kind of like a mix of like tactical and kind of philosophical
Hmm.
understanding what social media is. But anyways, that's a whole nother discussion. My point is, I love academia. I love teaching people. And so teaching and now kind of by extension consulting has really become a big deal for me. And I'm always out there looking to show people like how to do things and
Mhm.
how to better their businesses and so on.
What have been the biggest changes you've seen over that time? And I'm sure there's like 100,000 different
Mhm.
changes, but like the most notable ones, what has changed in your mind when it comes to SEO and what has stayed the same?
Okay, well, yeah, it's just like a completely different world. I mean, in the beginning, in the first few years, Google had this thing called PageRank. So linking, the one thing that Google did different that from all the other search engines. And one of the things that really separated and differentiated and brought it to the top is that most search engines, you would submit your website to the search engine. So I don't know if you remember those days. They would say like submit your search engine,
Yeah,
like
so
just submit
yeah,
your
I
website to our
remember I
search
remember
engine, you
those
know?
very clearly, and I'd always have to like remember how to do that because I'd only do like one or two, every few months. And so it'd be like, and then they change the interface because, that's just how they do it.
So then they got crawlers. So they'd go around
Mm,
crawling through the
right.
internet and then, send the data back to the company, the search engine, and then they had kind of like a picture of what your website was like. So it used to be a lot of like on-page SEO, like a lot that you had to do, like a lot of like on-page work. So make sure
Hmm.
your content is good and so on. And it's funny because so that part has not changed. Content is still king in many, many respects. But the kind of early days of Google was that you were trying to get page rank. You download like this little add-on to your browser where you could see on a scale of 0 to 10, there was this tiny bar and it was colored in and you wanted to see if you went to any given page how high that bar was. So the average site, if you could get like 4 on 10, that was pretty good. If you were like a very, very popular busy site, I don't know, like you visit a store like Best Buy and that might be like, an 8 on 10, something like that. And it's like, oh, wow, because, that's like, it's a much more heavily linked to website. And so Google was changing the game because they were saying, well, it's not just about what the content is on your page, it's who's linking to your website. And then it's the quality of those links. So if you put out a blog post and it always starts at 0 on 10 on their page rank scale. So basically, there's almost nothing there, just for an average website, let's say an average blog. And then Johnny's barbershop links to your blog post. Okay, so that Google looks at that and there's a little bit of power there. So maybe you'll go to like, and this is very, very simple terms. Maybe you go to like a 1 on 10. So like that suddenly that blog post is a little bit more important because you got a link from johnnysbarbershop.com, whatever. Then CNN reads your blog post and they read a story about that that's similar, and then CNN links to you. So you get a link from CNN.com. All of a sudden, Google looks at that and says, oh, well, CNN is an extremely powerful website. It's very highly linked to, has a lot of website traffic and so on. Okay, well, all of a sudden, this blog post now is maybe a 4 on 10, like it jumps even
Hmm.
higher. And again,
Hmm.
this is extremely, extremely basic way to explain it, but just,
Sure, sure.
for argument's
Yeah.
sake. This kind of trend became like the norm in SEO. So there were companies who were like, we control all these blogs and they're like a 4 on 10, they're 5 on 10. If all the pages on your website are only like a page rank 1 or a page rank 2, we can boost that. And if that page rank increases, then Google's going to give you more precedence in the search engine results pages and you're going to go higher and higher. And so that was a really big deal in the early days of SEO. That's one of the reasons you started seeing like all the snake oil salesman accusations, because
Hmm.
people were like, okay, well, selling you links, like high power links, doesn't automatically get you, like your business is not going to get a boost because it's a long road. What the
Yeah.
idea is, you get these links from other websites, it boosts the power of your website. Your website then ranks higher in Google. When people search, people find your website, and if the website is convincing enough, it has the information, the trustworthiness, and so on, then people will call. They'll look for the number and call you, or they'll go to your contact page and fill in your form. One way or another, they contact you, and then you have a
Mm.
chance to increase your sales. It's a really long road. And so there are a lot of people selling you like all these nonsensical services. So they would say, we will submit your website to 1,000 search engines. Okay, well, at the time, people were using like Google, Yahoo, maybe a couple others. So why a
Hmm.
thousand? So there's already
Right.
snake oil salesmen. Then those guys shifted into, okay, we're going to sell you a high page rank links, and that's going to automatically, bring all kinds of traffic to your website, and you're going to boost sales in your business and so on. There's kind of this history of like people trying to do it the easy way and find kind of like suckers take their services and so on. But there are legitimate SEO people out there. I'm certainly one of them. Like, I wasn't selling snake oil. My clients, businesses, have made a fortune over the years. Several of them have made, well, many of them actually have made millions because of the work that we did, even dating back 10, 15 years ago, even, or 20 years ago for that matter.
Going back to the snake oil bit, one of the things that I remember very clearly was it wasn't just all of the supposed products that they were selling you, but it was also a large part of the pitch was SEO takes time. It takes 6 months or it takes a year. And so when people were paying ridiculous amounts of money for the basic con artists, that's probably being a little strong. At the very least, lazy people who really weren't doing the work. It seemed to me like they were able to milk that for months because whenever the client would call them and say, I'm not seeing an increase in my search rankings, their standard response would be, well, SEO takes time. And so, they get a few extra months. And while that is certainly true, I feel like, it was a nice crutch for the people who were less than stellar at SEO would use to keep their products sold and to keep a client on the hook for at least a little bit longer. Did you find that to
Right.
be the case?
Okay, that's such an interesting perspective. So I agree that back then, and even to some extent today, it could take 6 to 12 months for your rankings to really
Hmm.
move. I mean, today things move a lot faster,
Yeah.
but it could take a long time. But yes, you could look at it from the perspective of, well, they could keep you on the hook for much longer and say, well, it takes time, it takes time. Like my contracts definitely said, like, kind of like, don't bother me until the 6 month point, because
Uh-huh.
it could take time, especially
Yeah.
like 15 years ago. You launch a website, Google has to index it, has to research it, has to assess all the links pointing into it, like it has to see, the value that you're offering, like the click-through ratio, like so when it shows a page of, let's say, 10 results, if someone clicks the first link and then doesn't hit the back button and go to the second link, then that means that that first link was appropriate because more and more people are
Mm.
finding, that first hit, that first option is satisfactory. But if they keep hitting the back button, going to the second link, and then hitting the back button, go to the
In
third link,
order. Yeah.
yeah, and they keep going, and then they work their way down, and they stop at the seventh one, well, if a lot of people do that, then Google realizes for this keyword term, that seventh one seems to be much more appropriate of an option to provide to people in the
Mm.
search engine results page. So we're going to push that up to like number one. Like
Hmm.
there's a lot involved. There's so much to it, and so getting back to the question of, how things have changed, this whole, like, let's say, series of changes that you have to do to your website and updates to make sure that it's up to Google standards has grown tremendously.
Hmm.
Like, if I wanted to give a real full-on SEO course today, usually I do a lot of consulting, but like if I want to give a full-on course, it would have to be like a 5-day course.
Mm.
And ideally, it wouldn't even be 5 days in a row. What I would do is I'd give like day one, give, let's say, workshop day one, have you go experiment for a little while, a week or two or three, or maybe more, then come back to me and I'll teach you even more for day two, and then
Hmm.
get more and more and more into it because there's so many factors involved. Like there's a lot of trends now, going into next year. There's a lot of trends now that didn't even exist like 5 years ago. Like AI is a huge component now.
Right. Right.
Reviews, let's say before 10 years ago, Google reviews was nothing.
Hmm.
Now it's like there's definitely an impact there.
Sure.
Both for linking for like kind of offsite SEO rather, and also for to convince people to even buy from you to begin with. Their system isn't entirely fair. Like I have some mysterious stranger. So like my company has like all 5-star reviews. One person gave it 4 stars because they didn't like the location of our office when I gave a workshop one day. Like, so he's like, he literally wrote that. He's like, the team is fantastic, learned so much, great workshop. But because
Yeah.
I had to travel like outside of the downtown core to get to
Yeah.
this metro
Yeah.
station, like, yeah, it was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm giving them 4 stars. Like,
It's
okay.
it's it's funny you bring that up because just yesterday, I'm with MainWP and MainWP always gets, we don't really push the Trustpilot reviews, but we get them, periodically. And just yesterday, we got a 4-star review, and I looked at it, and while I'm grateful that somebody went to the rev to write a review, the review was, I've been using this for a short time. It's an excellent plugin. I highly recommend it, but it was 4 stars. And I'm kind of like, and I get it. I think sometimes people are just, they have this mentality of there's always room for improvement, which I certainly subscribe to that. but that doesn't mean I'm averse to giving a 5-star review for something because it does what it's purported to do. I mean, I base it on, does it do what it's supposed to do? Does it work? Was it easy? And all that, if I give a restaurant a 5-star review, yeah, they might be able to make the food better, but did I go in and get served and was the food good? And did they do what they were supposed to do? The answer is yes. So it's 5 stars. I mean, I'm not,
Yeah, exactly.
so
And
uh,
so and then and
yeah.
so so this one person who's like, yeah, well, I had to travel a little bit more than I wanted to, which was honestly was nothing to it. Like we're right
Yeah,
next to the
yeah,
metro, 10
yeah,
minutes.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I'm like, okay, fine, 4-star review, I'll take it. We have one 5-star review, and I've complained to Google about it, and they're like, there's nothing we can do about it. This one person, she wrote, gave us a 1-star review, gave a 1-star review to an SEO company in Toronto, and gave a 1-star review to like, I guess the apartment building she was living in. So it's like, okay, but I don't know who she is. I
Mm,
have no idea. She just
yeah, yeah,
who knows? Like who like
yeah,
just randomly
yeah,
gives me a 1 star. Like I don't know
yeah,
who you are. What did I do? What work did we do for you? Why are you giving us 1 star? Like
yeah,
I have no idea. So,
yeah,
the importance of Google reviews is up there, but I hate that there's no proper feedback mechanism like to, reach out to Google and say, yeah, this is really like
yeah.
nonsense.
The only
Um,
thing you can do is speak to the audience, but that doesn't help your audio SEO. So you as the owner can respond to the review and say, what would it take to get a 5 star, or we're sorry that you didn't, or whatever, right?
yeah, yeah.
But that speaks to the audience that's looking at the reviews. I don't imagine that feeds into the Google algorithm at all.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It doesn't. And so my reply on there was like, we form close relationships with all our clients, which is absolutely true. I know
Hmm.
everybody. I know like who everybody is. I work with them directly. I don't know who you are. So,
Yeah.
and I don't have a history of people being upset. I've had clients leave usually for financial reasons
Hmm.
where they're like, okay, you've gotten too expensive for me. I'm still a small business or
Hmm.
whatever. My kid learned SEO now, and we're going to take a shot there, which is kind
Yeah.
of funny because that's happened a few times, and they almost always
Mm.
come back after 6 months or a year, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Yeah,
Yeah.
my kid doesn't know what he or she is doing,
Yeah.
so I want to come back to you."
Yeah.
That's
Well,
happened a few times, or the
yeah.
businesses just close or what have you. But like,
Right.
yeah, I don't have like. There's nobody that would have just written a 1 star. Like, I don't, so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
annoying, but that's just part of the game now. So you have to
Yeah.
account for Google reviews. That's important. The AI factor is super important.
Hmm.
Content marketing is super important, which is why I wrote a book on it and about 10
Hmm.
years ago, which still has value today, but I should probably
Hmm.
update it.
And what's the
Um,
name of the book?
so that book is called Content Marketing Ideas.
Okay.
Literally conceived of on stage at WordCamp Montreal in 2013.
Mm.
I was literally on stage and I made a list of content ideas, and I couldn't believe the whole room raised their hand with their smartphone and took pictures of the screen, and I switched it and I saw a lot of people like going like, "Oh, damn, I needed that." Like I saw like the
Mm.
murmur, I could hear it
Hmm.
in
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
audience. So I
Yeah.
said, "Oh, you guys want this? Okay, I'll just put the screen back for a second and
Uh-huh.
take your picture."
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the funny thing is I said, "You know what? Like while on stage I thought of this. I was like, "You know what? Why don't I create a list of SEO and content marketing, like content marketing ideas for SEO? I'll come up with how about 100 ideas. I'll make it available on my website. How about
Mm.
that?" Everybody's
Mm.
like nodding their head and whatever.
Mm. Cool.
I get off stage, somebody literally comes up to me, he's like, "Oh, where can I access that list?" And I was like, "I just thought of it 10 minutes ago on stage.
That's
Like
amazing.
give me some
That's a,
time."
that's a, yeah, but that's awesome that interaction and a large part of it, you and I have both done presentations is being able to read your audience, right?
Yes.
Reading the room is such an important thing, and I think a lot of people may not realize when they're in the audience how much they can inspire us as speakers with ideas. And I mean, this is a perfect example of
Yeah.
how the audience inspired you, and you went and you wrote a book about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was I came up with a list of 100 ideas, and then I was like, "Oh, you know what? I have to give context because I'm very, again, from this academic background. You don't just make a list just to make a list. Like I don't
Mhm.
do things half-assed. That's just not
Mhm.
my style. So I was
Uh-huh.
like, well, let me give a little bit of explanation how to use these ideas to enhance your SEO. And
Mhm.
so I was like, okay, so I wrote a little chapter, like a little intro, and then a little more, and a little more. And then I was like, wait, this is turning into a book. Why don't I just make a book? And then 400 pages later, I was like, okay, the book is done. And I put out the book.
That's hilarious. That's great though. That's fantastic. not to harp too much on the snake oil salesman thing, before the interview started, you and I were talking about the snake oil bit, and you were like, it's a it's been around since the beginning and it's still around today, that people just there's this impression that it's a snake oil business. And you've certainly given good reason to see why there are charlatans out there, and how easy it is for them to like operate in that space. So my question then is, how, like, you're obviously a legitimate, I know you, a lot of people within the WordPress community know you. They know that you're a legitimate SEO guy who's done amazing things. My question is, if you're like a freelancer or an agency that's just starting out or dipping your toe into SEO work, or trying to provide SEO for your client, how do you like disseminate between who the charlatans are and who the real good SEO people are?
It's not easy because here's the thing. One of the basic ways to find an SEO is to just go to a city and type in, like the city name and the term SEO. So
Hmm.
I'm in Montreal, you could type in Montreal SEO. If you're in the Bay Area, you could type, Bay Area SEO and, see
Hmm.
who comes up. You'd think that that's the best way to do it. And that's one of the better ways to do it, but it's not always the case. Like, there are charlatans out there who have kind of manipulated Google. And back then, this is another big difference. There was a ton of manipulating in Google. Yeah, I could give like just a whole hour on all the con jobs that people were doing. They were really selling like black hat SEO, and get they would get their clients banned and they didn't care as long as they were paid and whatever. They didn't have like long-term integrity involved like in their thinking process of their business model. But these days you can still con Google to some extent. It's not as good as it used to be in many respects because I've seen some websites ranking really well for terms like, city name plus SEO. And then I go to their website and I know a lot of SEOs and I know who's good and who's not. And I see some of the people who are like really not that good. Their website just happens to be ranking really high. So even though that's a very good way to start your assessment, it's not necessarily the best way. What you want to look at is find some examples of like that of what the client has done, see what kind of work they've done, who their clientele is, find out if the keyword terms are in line with what you're looking for. One of the client areas that I specialize in is plastic surgeons, the cosmetic beauty industry, like
Mm-hmm.
cosmetic dermatologists, and also medical communities. We work with a lot of doctors. And, if you go to Google and type in Montreal plastic surgeon or, cosmetic surgery Montreal, or I mean, I'm just saying Montreal, but we have clients all over. But like, if your clients come up for very competitive, high paying keywords, then it's like, okay, then this is starting to look a little bit more legit. But if you're looking for like Johnny's Barbershop, back to that, Johnny's Barbershop in this part of town is so specific, or a barbershop in this part of town, then it's like, okay, well, maybe that's not as competitive. Maybe that's a lot easier to rank for.
Hmm.
So you want to see what are the terms that the SEO company is getting their clients to rank for, and try to assess their level of difficulty, and be like, okay, well, those are really hard terms to rank for. If they can get them up there for that, then there's something to it. If all they're showing you is like really easy terms, then it's like, okay, well, who knows if they can actually tackle the harder projects. Something else to consider. So back to the AI. Now, content marketing is a big part of SEO, whether
Hmm.
people want to agree or not. Like, it's a huge part.
That's kind of the thing that hasn't changed, right? Content is still king.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just a type of content, right?
Yeah, exactly. And content takes various forms, but generally, at least the content on your page on like each page of the website has to be substantial, unique, written in a very particular way. And with AI, what I'm seeing, so kind of like the new kind of snake oil, like it always evolves because there's always people looking to sell you services that they can make a high profit. It's a fear sale. Like in the early days, it was like, well, don't you want to be listed in the search engines? Like, we'll get you listed in 1,000 of them. It's like, give us
Mhm.
$100 and we'll do it. I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
okay, I couldn't even name more than 10. So what's
yeah,
1,000?
yeah, yeah.
Um, and then
Bob's
eventually there's,
search engine.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And then eventually they evolved all their services. We'll sell you bank links, we'll sell you whatever. Okay, fine. Then we get to today, and they're like, well, we're going to sell you high quality content. Well, what's high quality content? Okay, so if you're a barbershop, and you say, okay, we don't know what content to write, and you go to like some, content specialist, like an SEO saying, we're going to write all this content for you. You want to ask them, how are you writing content? Because chances are they're going to ChatGPT. They're saying, give us a list of 10 different haircut
Mhm.
styles and then expand each one into a full page article and then copy paste into the website and boom, it's like done. And then they sell
Mhm.
that. It's all done in 5 minutes. You charge $100 a page and it's like you get your $1,000 and you're done. That's bad SEO. You see, that's when you're messing up the difference between SEO as an art and SEO as a science. So SEO as a science is what needs to be done. We know that you need content. We know that you need like a title tag, an H1 tag, a description meta tag. We know that you need backlinks. We know that other websites need to link into your website. That's all the science. We know that these are things among literally hundreds of factors that go into ranking a website. We know you need Google reviews and so on and so on and so on. That's the science. The art is how good are you at producing that content? How good are you at writing a title tag that when it appears in a snippet, like when it appears on a Google search engine results page, how catchy is it?
Mhm.
Like what will does it get people to actually click? Does it have the right keywords in it? Finessing that, massaging that like into something that's like of value, that's the art. I happen to be really good at it. I wouldn't say majority. I couldn't tell you one way or another, but a huge part of the SEO industry is not understanding how that works. It's
Mhm.
just like throw it up there, throw in some keywords, and you're all set. Not understanding the bigger picture. And
Mhm.
so if you take content that was written by like ChatGPT and throw it on a website, then first of all, Google has AI built into it. It knows if it's reading AI produced content.
Mhm.
So you already need a human touch. You need somebody to go in and adapt that text, rewrite the sentence structure because I use ChatGPT like 100 times a day. I see the sentence structure that it uses.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would never keep that sentence structure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Add a certain touch. If you're talking about we give mohawks,
Mhm.
our favorite cut to give at our barbershop is to give mohawks, then
Uh-huh.
it's like, okay, well, I'm sure ChatGPT can write a great story about, mohawk haircuts and whatever.
Mhm.
Great. But you don't want to copy paste that and put it into your website. What you want to do is actually say people in our city. So if you're like in New York, well, if you walk down the streets of Manhattan, you're going to see more and more people, sporting mohawks, and because New York City is known for that. Here's a little history of New York and mohawks, and write a little story about it and build it into your
Mhm.
content. All of a sudden, Google's going to say, "Hey, wait a minute. This is original. This is different. This is not just some generic." Amount of information that was pulled from ChatGPT, which itself is based on, scraping all these other websites and just putting it together for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's, lacks like novelty. So there's something new here. Maybe this page deserves to be ranked a little bit higher.
Mhm.
Like, look, I'm the first to admit I love taking my notes. Like, so I'm a prolific writer. I've written extensively. When I wrote my award-winning master's thesis at McGill, it was done in like 3 weeks. Like I
Mhm.
literally closed the blinds. I realized the deadline was coming up and I was
Uh-huh.
procrastinating like
Uh-huh.
crazy. I
Uh-huh.
had my data, I had everything. And I closed the blinds of my apartment. I didn't know if it was night or day, and I just wrote like 200 pages in 3 weeks. I just like
Mhm.
wrote night and day, got it
Mhm.
done, won an award. I'm like, okay, this is great. So like I love writing. I'm very good at it. And I've learned I have different styles over the years.
Mhm.
Whether it's academic writing or business writing or writing for my magazine and so on, so on and so forth. Now, I will admit that it is much easier to take your notes, especially if you tend to come up with a lot of ideas, which I just happen to be a very idea generating type of person. I'll come up with a lot of ideas and I'll write a bunch of notes, throw them into ChatGPT and say, turn this into an article, turn this into a blog post, turn this into a page for a website. And then I'll take that, and it's much easier to edit that than it
Mhm.
is to write it all from
Yeah.
scratch.
Yeah.
And so it saves you a lot of time.
I've actually found that when I'm feeling uninspired, I'll do exactly that. And Chat GPT will annoy me so much with what it spits out that it then motivates me to actually write it properly. So, there's that factor too. So yeah, I get what you're saying. And it's not that Chat GPT does a terrible job. It's just I'm like, this doesn't sound like a human wrote it, and
Yeah.
I need to fix it. And so, yeah, I know what you're
Yeah, and
saying.
also like with ChatGPT, like if you have no ideas about what to write about a topic, the beauty is you could go to ChatGPT and say, "Give me 10 ideas to write about this
Yeah,
topic."
yeah,
However, those 10 ideas are taken from somewhere else.
right,
ChatGPT is not generating it for you.
right,
It's taking it from somewhere else to come
yeah,
up with something. And
yeah,
so again, you're lacking some originality. And if you want to rank well in SEO, when you're working on the content, you want some originality.
mm,
If you're writing, the history of our company, well, Ma and Pa started this company 100 years ago and whatever, ChatGPT can't come up with that.
yeah,
That's
right,
original. That's an original storytelling element to the history of your company.
right.
But I know for a fact that there are some companies they tell ChatGPT like just fabricate some history of my company just to put it on our About Us page, and like I'm like you're crazy. Like that's an opportunity to tell great stories and to put something
Yeah,
original in,
yeah,
and you're just
yeah,
telling it to steal from everyone
yeah.
else.
Talk about snake oil.
Yeah, exactly. So something else that's of interest with respect to how things were 25 years ago versus today. So in the early days, there were some people who were doing SEO audits.
Mm,
And I always kind of laughed at that. I'm like, people are auditing SEO. Like SEO is so new. Like, how could you be doing SEO audits? But now I feel like it's much more relevant than it was back then. And so last year I revamped my whole SEO audit like approach. And I started selling my packages first to my clients and outsiders. And now there's so much competition out there, and they're like, well, what can we do for SEO? People will call me and say, what do we do? What do we do? And I look at their site and I'll say, look, before you scrap your site, before you try to fix anything, let's do an audit. Because now what I'm finding is the sites that have been around for years. So someone will come to me, it's like, we haven't really updated in 7 years. So on one instinct is, well, if it hasn't been updated in 7 years, we'll probably just trash it and start over. But before we do that, within a lot of cases now, I say, let's do an SEO audit and see if things can be fixed, adjusted, and so on. And so my SEO audit service has actually taken off. And I think we're in a period where it's like it's an idea that's whose time has come. Whereas
mhm,
25 years ago, there were people doing SEO audits. I was like, this is kind of a joke because it's like almost nothing to it. Now it's the real deal. Now there's so many factors to look at. It really opens your eyes. I did an SEO audit of a site a few weeks ago, and literally the company that built the site didn't put H1 tags on the homepage.
mm,
And I don't know. I was like, what do you mean they didn't put H1 tags? Like that's like SEO 101. The most basic thing is
mhm,
put an H1 tag in. An H1 tag is not as important as it was, 20 years ago. But it still has its point there. There is,
mhm,
something to it. And I just couldn't believe it. And if we didn't do the SEO audit, I never would have found that out.
mm,
And there have been some really kind of shocking and surprising things that I've discovered from doing audits. And I think that's kind of another direction for like within the SEO world that like has kind of taken off like more recently,
mhm,
as opposed to like 25 years ago when things were much, much simpler.
mm. And I imagine that if you hire someone to do an SEO audit, it's really easy to tell if the company knows what they're doing or not once you look at the report.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. It's like
yeah,
if I'm good enough to write you, 20, 30, 50-page report,
yeah.
then I think I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that
Uh,
report makes sense. I mean, you could, if the report makes sense, if it's a bunch of stupid stuff, then that's different. But you can tell the good reports probably from the bad reports, even if you don't know anything about SEO.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Last year, I did a report for a bank, like a major, 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 billion-dollar multinational, whatever, huge bank. I have an NDA. I can't give it too much detail, but just the gist of it is, I wrote a 70-page report for them,
Hmm.
and I used like about a dozen different tools for it. Like I didn't just press a button with software and it
Sure.
didn't just spit out something. Like I had to sit there and analyze and think, and it took me weeks to really, really think about the core of the issue that they're trying to deal with. At the end, they were like blown away because we would have like Zoom calls like every
Hmm.
week or every couple of weeks just to be like, here's some progress, here's a little bit of what I found. And I'd be like, well, what direction do you want me to go in? And they're like, well, I got blank faces. Like, I don't know
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
next. And it's like, okay, well, this is what I suggest, and
Mm,
let's go in this direction. And then, and it got deeper and deeper into what they were looking for.
mm.
And if you're a snake oil salesman, you couldn't do that. If you didn't
Yeah,
know what you were
yeah,
doing, that you'd
yeah,
be in that meeting and be like, "Oh, you
yeah,
don't know where I should go with the report? Well, neither do I."
yeah,
Then
yeah,
you're
yeah,
in
yeah,
trouble,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's like I always had an idea. I'm like, "Okay, well, if you guys don't know, I know where to go. Based on what I found so far, I'm going to dig deeper in this direction and that direction."
Hmm.
So 70 pages later, boy, and they read that report. They came back
Hmm.
to me with like two or three questions, and I was like, I can't believe they read every line of that report.
Wow. Well,
I
that's
was
good.
I was
That's
blown
good.
away.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm glad you brought up the SEO audit because you said that at the beginning of the program, and I definitely wanted to touch on that and kind of, you know, talk a little bit more about that because I know that it's something that I think, like you said, its time has come. I think probably in the old days, an SEO audit, a legitimate SEO audit, probably was like 1 page long. So,
Yeah, there's like nothing to it.
yeah, yeah. Switching gears just a little bit. Let's just say that I'm a startup. Like an agency. I want to get an agency going, or I am a freelancer and I'm wanting to dip my toe into doing some SEO, at least at the basic levels, or even if I'm just maintaining my own website and I'm a small business. Do you have any like tips or tricks or any like free tools or low cost tools that people can use to kind of, dip their toes in? Or do you say just hire an SEO guy and don't even worry about it? Or
Well, honestly, I think it's important that if you're a freelancer, small agency, and let's say freelancer in particular, and you want to get started, I'm assuming like they already build websites and they have to
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And it may even be just for mostly local businesses, which I think is easier to rank SEO wise organically than, global businesses and things like that. I would imagine just, like if I'm doing a gym and it's a local gym, or like you said, a barbershop. By the way, the irony of talking about mohawks to people with our hairstyles is not lost on me. But anyway.
Okay, so first of all, if you're building websites and you're good at some basic design in Photoshop or Canva or whatever tool you're
Hmm.
using, and you're good at integrating that into a WordPress theme, let's say for example, and building out a WordPress site, for example, it would be really wise to learn the basics of SEO because at its core, even though I think that some SEOs would disagree with me, at its core, the framework of basic SEO is still there after all these years. Using that title tag, writing a meta description, writing good content, formatting it with H1s, H2s, using alt tags on your photos. The basics are all still there. And once you get that down, you can feel confident enough to move on and learn about other aspects of SEO. So, having your Google business page up. It's become so complicated to get backlinks. Like it's so much harder than ever before to get backlinks. We've gone through a whole progression of what's called reciprocal links, where it's like you link to me, I'll link to you. And then Google
Hmm.
figured that out. And
Hmm.
then people who do like these like three-way backlinks where it's like you link to me, he links to him, and he links back to me, and it's whatever, and all these complicated linking
Hmm.
schemes. Like there's so much to it. That's like a whole other discussion. But at the end of the day, just doing on-site SEO, the basic stuff, learn the basics, figure out how to get a few links to your client's website. Even if it's a link from your portfolio as a web designer, jenniferswebdesign.com, you're building, you click on, slash portfolio. On that portfolio page, if you could just add a link from your website to your client's website, that's already going to help them at least a
Mm.
tiny bit. There's a little
Okay.
bit there. Learn the basics and you'll, grow in confidence. Don't use ChatGPT too much. Without a lot of editing.
Yeah.
And if you're hired to write the content, even though all these years people always refer to me as a CEO and I called myself a CEO for so long, really I was a solopreneur, but that term didn't even exist. And trying to explain to people that it's like I hire like my team, even though they would come to my office, some of them would come to my office on a regular basis, some of them would work from all different cities. And we just worked together, we collaborated to work on different projects, and I just headed up the team and they worked for me
Hmm.
most of the time with a lot of
Hmm.
freedom to work for other people because they're all freelancers. But if you don't know SEO, farm it out to somebody else.
Mhm,
Like let
mhm.
somebody else take care of it. Like I'm not a programmer. I do basic, simple programming, but I'm not a programmer. So if it comes to
Yeah,
programming, I hire a programmer.
yeah.
Let them take care of it. With the SEO audits, for example, like I offer it as a white label. So it's like
Mhm,
I know that a lot of people, like it took me a really, really long time to put together my method of analyzing websites.
mhm,
Like I said, it wasn't just pressing a button, getting a report. Like I custom write every single report, figuring out, which tools I should be using for every report and so on took time. So I know that there are other SEO people out there who are like, yeah, I wouldn't even know where to begin with this. So it's like, okay, you can come to me and say, you can offer it to your client. Like my base report right now is $1,900. You can go to your client and say, yeah, it's $3,000 for an SEO
mhm,
audit. I'll take
mhm,
care of the whole report, send it to you. You make $1,100, like, and it's the same thing with the programming. Like if
mhm.
you're really good at design and you need a programmer to put together a website, then charge, let's say, $100 an hour and, pay a programmer $75 an hour
Right,
and,
right. Yeah,
and keep the
yeah,
$25 difference,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just giving you like a rough example just
No,
for
no,
argument's
sure,
sake,
sure.
and do what you're good at and learn a
Yeah,
little bit about the other specialties, but don't
yeah,
worry about mastering every single specialty and
yeah.
grow your
Yeah.
business that way.
Yeah, no, I just know that like when people are just starting out, they kind of have to like do the whole put on every single hat just to get their business off the ground. And so that means having a knowledge of the basics a lot of times from the get-go. And I really, really like what you said earlier about knowing the difference between which part is the art and which part is the science. And it sounds to me like, your recommendation, if I wanted to like decipher a little bit what you said, it's kind of like learn the science. And then when it comes to the art, if you can't do it, then hire out for that.
Yeah.
Like, would that
That
be
that's
kind of a
dead
good
on.
summary? Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. It helps you become a better judge too, because
Hmm.
if you hire out someone to do it and you understand what needs to be done,
Right.
you can read it and say, "Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
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 you did a good
yeah.
job." Or,
Yeah, and that was another point I had in the back of my head, but it didn't come out my mouth, and you said it better anyway. So yeah,
you
yeah.
know like a few other things to consider also, like I mean there's so many parts to, like, how you want to go about being a freelancer. Do you want to be a generalist or compete with what everybody's doing, or do you want to become a specialist? So for
Hmm.
example, speed optimization. So we
Hmm.
have, like, and this is new, so this is like something that nobody considered 25 years ago. We have a speed optimization package now. So some people come to us and we look at their site and it's like, oh my God, this site like takes way too long to
Hmm.
load.
Hmm.
Google looks at the loading factor. They don't want people waiting forever for a website to load, especially on a mobile device.
Hmm.
So your website needs to be quick. And so
Hmm.
it's like there are always ways to speed up a website, and there's different
Yeah.
tests you can use in different
Hmm.
services.
Hmm.
And so, Google has its own page speed system where you can put your website in and it'll give you like different scores,
Hmm.
performance score, SEO score, and
Hmm.
so on, all speed related. You can use GT metrics. Like there's all these different companies out there and tools that offer tools that will help you look at that. Now, as a freelancer, you could just become a specialist in speeding up websites, and you could be the one that sells your service as a white label to somebody else.
Hmm.
Like it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
that you're the one who always builds the websites. You could be the one who specializes in speeding up people's websites.
Hmm.
A few years ago, one of my clients' websites was hacked, and we fixed it, or so we thought, and then it was hacked again, and we couldn't find the source of the hack. And I literally found somebody who's in California, actually, I think. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, who literally specializes in, like, if you can't figure out the hack, I'll figure it out for you. And we gave him, I think, $300 or $400. And the
Hmm.
next day, he came up with a small report and he fixed the hack. And he's like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's this
Yeah.
problem. He had all
Yeah.
these advanced tools that he was used to
Yeah.
using and knew how to use well. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, there you go. The hack, the,
Yeah.
the, the problem solved.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like I didn't have to have my team, like I didn't have my programmers continuously work on this problem again and again and again, where I'm racking up a bill of $1,000 that I'm absorbing because the client's website was hacked, but we gave them a certain guarantee that it wouldn't be.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's like, uh-oh, this is coming out of like my pocket. My bottom line
Yeah.
is going down. So
Yeah.
I'd rather just pay somebody to do the service. Here's $400, find the problem, and it's done.
Yeah.
Everybody's
Yeah.
happy. And it's important to me that my clients are happy, like extremely important to me, but also that I I want their website to be up so that they can generate business.
Hmm.
like I
Right,
don't want
right.
them to have problems. A couple of quick things, especially like as part of the emerging changes in the landscape, again, especially compared to, I'd go as far back as 25 years, but even as far back as like 3 years, like Bing, run by, like Microsoft, whatever, like
Hmm.
Bing was basically done. Like Google has like the vast majority of market share in terms
Sure.
of usage. Now, Bing has connected with OpenAI. They own a portion of OpenAI. And so OpenAI is pulling results from Bing. So now Bing optimization is becoming more important again. And one
Hmm.
of the most important things that people can do right now is get into the habit of updating your profile on Google and Bing. So people are updating their Google business profile, their
Hmm.
NAP, their NAP, like name, address, phone number,
Hmm.
like reviews and photos and all this stuff. Everyone always pushes Google, but you know what? Bing might be having a bit of a comeback. So you
Hmm.
might want to consider updating your Bing profile. Now, 3 years
Yeah.
ago,
Okay.
much less
Yeah.
25 years ago, 3 years ago, no one was like, Bing, who cares about my
Yeah.
Bing
Yeah.
profile? But now you should consider your Bing profile, especially since, look,
Mm.
you're looking for a barbershop, you're still going to Google. You're typing in your
Yeah.
city name and
Yeah.
barbershop. Eventually people are going to go to ChatGPT and go to ChatGPT search engine and be like, find me a barbershop. Where's it
Right.
pulling the results from? Not from Google. It's
Yeah.
pulling the results from Bing. How is
Yeah.
Bing going
Yeah.
to rank you? Well, they're going to
Yeah.
know because you updated your Bing profile.
Wow, that's a really good point. And I mean, and if there's anything that I've learned being in technology for, you know, 3,000 years like I have, it's that you never count anyone down and out and never count Microsoft down, never count, Google. Google, they're complaining about losing market share and AdWords isn't working as well as it used to, and people aren't putting the money. But they'll figure out, these companies with this kind of money, they figure out ways to reinvent themselves in order to be relevant again. And so don't ever count anyone out. I kind of
Hmm.
feel when it comes to these companies that have very, very deep pockets.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're a freelancer, I'm going to plug this. Buy my book, The Psychology of Pricing.
Oh, well, I was going to get to that because I'm glad. I mean, this is a good segue. This is his book, by the way, and uh
That one's from
and
just a couple years ago.
and
Another
this is
400 pages.
This is a great book. And because Brian is multifaceted and multi-talented, we are going to be doing a second part or another part to this interview where we actually do get into pricing for agencies and the psychology behind it. And we're going to talk a little bit about this book because it's a pretty cool book and it has lots of pictures of Brian in it. So,
It does. That's a
and
few.
yeah.
But don't underestimate like what your value is
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
freelancer.
Yeah.
And that's really important. Your service is valuable. The reason people are hiring you is because they can't do this themselves. And so they're willing to pay someone who can do it for them. And that's, valuing yourself is a big part of, what I push in that book that I want freelancers to understand. That book was written for freelancers and small agencies, and I want you to understand that you're worth something and you need to charge for it. Don't just, say, "Oh, I'll work for, $10 an hour just to get the work."
Yeah.
Like, forget it.
And you probably also want to realize that because you have value, it's okay to say no to clients who think they can do it all themselves. And so that they don't value you. If they don't value you, then it's not going to be a long-term relationship anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably. But we'll get into that when we do the next interview, which I'm really looking forward to because, I'm in marketing and I love the whole idea of psychology and trying to figure out what makes people do what they do. I'm looking forward to digging into that one. So anyway, is there anything else you want to add, or do you think we've pretty much covered all that we can without getting into a 5-day workshop?
I would just add that use AI, embrace AI. There's kind of a pushback against AI in some respects. AI is not going anywhere. The same way 20 years ago, 25 years ago, people were like, "Oh yeah, this internet thing, that's not my deal. I'm not into
Mm,
this internet thing." It's like, yeah, it doesn't matter if you're into it or not. It's going to be taking over your life. Now, everyone just expects the internet to work. It's on their phone, it's in their pocket, it's
mhm.
by their bedside at night. It's everywhere. This is where we are. We're in the year 2000, where internet is analogous to where we are in 2024 with AI. This is it.
Okay.
Like AI
Okay.
is going to be everywhere. Embrace it, but use it like, with integrity. If you're selling SEO services, use it in the right way. Don't use it in malicious black hat ways.
What's going to be the equivalent of the Y2K bug that we had with the internet back, in 2000? What will be the AI equivalent, I wonder?
Well, if you're looking at something that's going to scare the hell out of everybody, make people spend enormous amounts of money for nothing, I think it's going to be when AI is in robot format.
Okay. So Terminator
Yeah.
kind of, yeah. So when Skynet becomes real.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
got it.
It's funny. I gave a talk. I think it was at WordCamp Montreal. I want to say 2017 or 2018, something like that.
Mhm.
And I was trying to explain AI and machine learning and how things were just getting started. And in my talk, I literally I said, look, you're typing into a screen, whether it's on your laptop or your phone, whatever. But back then it was mostly, if you consider,
Computers.
computer, just the idea of computers.
Hmm.
And I said, I put a picture of like Data from Star Trek. And I put a picture of a Terminator, and I put a few other like, like some Stylons from Battlestar Galactica.
Mhm.
And I said, look, okay, you see all these humanoid forms? If Google was in this humanoid form, that would scare the shit out of you. Like,
Yeah,
and it's
right.
like, right? So think about it. You're typing in all this info, you're talking to
Yeah,
your to all
yeah,
these devices, and it's like you don't really think about it because they're a device.
yeah,
Just wait until they're humanoid form,
yeah.
and you're gonna think twice about a lot of the things
Yeah.
that you do as you interact with AI moving forward.
Well, given the choice, I'll take Data.
Yeah, well.
Obviously.
But like honestly, like in some ways, I kind of want. So I'm very okay. Personally, I'm a very private person. Like
Hmm.
you'll see a little bits of my personal life on my Instagram profile,
Hmm.
but generally, I'm a very private person. So when you search for me online, you're gonna find my work, my books, my whatever. But you're not gonna find that much about my personal life outside of Instagram. Now, the interesting thing, or maybe a little bit on Twitter, but whatever. Um, Here's the thing. Nonetheless, I actually still want to be able to interact with AI. So like the Enterprise, like I want to talk to the ship's computer, like I just want to be like, yeah, so computer, tell me about this, tell me about
Hmm.
that. And I just want to have conversations with AI and just walk around my house and be able, or even
Hmm.
switch to my car and still talk to it and
Hmm.
continue conversations. So there's that. And there's a complete loss of privacy with that because all that information is
Right,
going somewhere.
right.
But so
Yeah.
I've drawn the line and I've made certain decisions about where I like things I will put into the computer and into these AI systems and
Mhm.
things that I won't. But I'm not naive enough to think that in the future, in the not too far future, everyone's going to be interacting this way. This is going
Yeah.
to be like talking to Kit in Knight Rider. You get in the car and
Yeah.
like, and you'll be talking to your AI, or it's like
Well,
walking around the enterprise and you'll be speaking to the computer.
yeah, I noticed this weekend when I was watching football this weekend, Google's really pushing their Pixel with Gemini. And the commercials now are literally just that now. People having conversations with Gemini. So it's not even like, you know, Alexa, what's the weather today? It's actually people having these full back and forth conversations like what you're talking about. And while I feel like in its current state, it's still not quite there yet. It's very obvious that it's right around the corner, and it's very
Yeah, it's right
obvious,
around.
and it's very obvious that that's what they're shooting for if that's what they're advertising already. So
Yeah, just wait till Elon Musk's, robots are out there.
yeah,
Have you seen
yeah.
iRobot? Have you seen?
Yeah, well, it'll be the robots, and then he's got that Neuralink, right? So just
Mhm.
wait, and you won't even have to like verbalize anything.
Yeah.
It'll just be, it's a gonna be an
Whole other
interesting world.
dimension.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's
So,
that.
all right. Well, I appreciate your time, Brian. It's always great talking to you. We'll pick up this conversation and get into pricing and the psychology behind it and all other things that have to do with providing value to your clients in that way. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
All right, thank you. I'm looking
All
forward
right.
to it too.
All right. Have a great day, Brian.
Bye.